Hello, thanks for joining us. Special Reporter Online. I'm Brett Baer. If this is your first time aboard, welcome. It's a different forum where you can ask the panel questions, you can give us comments. It's a little bit more relaxed. You can weigh in. Joining us, George and Jason, and we are joined by Fox News Chief Washington Correspondent James Rosen, playing the role of Mara.
That's a very poor substitute.
We want to begin, though, with something that James really wanted me to put on the show, and we didn't, but we should have. Sir George Martin died as a producer for all but one of the Beatles albums. Martin produced more #1 songs than any other record producer in history and helped revolutionize pop music and popular culture. Martin often played on the Beatles' recordings and also composed most of their string arrangements, including those heard on Yesterday, the most popular song of all time, with some 4,000 recorded versions. Sir George Martin was 90. So obviously, he could claim the 5th Beatle.
Oh, that was a moniker often applied to George Martin. And it's a very strong claim because outside of the 4 Beatles, nobody played a musical instrument on as many Beatle recordings as George Martin. Attitudinally, he was not the 5th Beatle. He was about 15 years older than most of the Beatles. He never went in for the drugs and the psychedelic dress. He always showed up to Abbey Road Studios, even throughout Sgt. Pepper and the White Album, and the real sort of druggy period for the Beatles in a shirt and tie. But he was a genius, and he worked with a lot of artists outside of the Beatles and had major successes there too. I read this today, and this was shocking to me. In 1963, for 37 of the 52 weeks of the year, a George Martin produced song was #1 on the UK Top 100.
So the Chicago Cubs is to George as the Beatles are to James Rosen.
Winners pick winners, generally speaking, I find. George?
Check back in October.
All right. So
thank you for doing that.
You're welcome. We should have gotten the show, probably, just for a pop culture moment.
I got to meet Sir George Martin, by the way, once. This was 1991.
I knew we weren't done, by the way.
Yeah.
I was trying to
just
segue.
No, please,
go ahead.
Segue. You know what? I'm going to do the segues tonight. And I was very young, and I behaved badly, and I was just a little overzealous in my demonstration of my enthusiasm at meeting one of my heroes, and I badgered him for about 25 minutes with his family. And it went on and on. I mean, I still have the autograph I collected.
It's hard to believe.
You've been subjected to this very treatment from me as one of my heroes.
He subs for a Special Report Online one time, and suddenly it's all your show. Okay, let's talk more
Rosen
about
steaks, Rosen water.
Rosen vodka. Okay, speaking of the election. I mentioned earlier in the show that Megyn Kelly has this town hall tonight with Marco Rubio, and one of the things she talks about is this rumor out there that there's a unity ticket that's going to emerge with Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio. Take a listen to this.
Let's talk about the big rumor that's out there, and some of the folks here were wondering about this too, is the possibility of a so-called unity ticket between you and Ted Cruz. Those who see you and Cruz splitting the vote, the two of you together could possibly surpass Donald Trump in a lot of these states if you joined, is the belief by many. Is that a possibility?
Well, look, I think that's the kind of drama that makes it interesting in TV to speculate about. Those kinds of things very rarely work.
He goes on to say there hasn't been any conversation. It's just not happening. George, I mean, the fact that he has to fend off kind of those rumors and questions suggests Florida is a tough haul for him.
Well, the Fox poll shows that he has a steep hill to climb. At this point in 1976, when Reagan went to the convention, with a tantalizing opportunity, he thought, to break up some of the delegates that were on unit rule, bound to Gerald Ford, or to break up the Pennsylvania delegation. He threw that Hail Mary pass, picking a man he had never met to be his running mate, Senator Schweiker of Pennsylvania. It had zero effect.
Yeah. James, you did the piece on the contested convention. We can't call it brokered, but contested convention possibilities. And, you know, they're out there, but it's possibly more likely that Trump gets to 1237.
most analysts say it's much more likely that there won't be a contested convention. But those who have even entertained the possibility have been quick to note that if there are any such machinations on display, it could spell the end of the Republican Party as we know it. I know there's always been people speculating about the end of, or the conservative crack up for fun and profit along the years, but there would be, even Ted Cruz, who could be a beneficiary of these kinds of machinations, has said there would be an open revolt amongst the electorate.
I don't know about that.
I mean,
it's part of the
people
rules.
get up and walk out? Wouldn't they just say, forget it?
It's possible, but these are the rules. The rules say you need a majority, not a plurality. And if you don't have the delegates, you don't get the nomination. And if it becomes brokered or contested, it's not cheating, it's not stealing the nomination. It's part of the rules.
What if he does have 1237 and there's some effort afoot to deprive him?
Well, then it's pretty cut and dry.
That's a different, yeah.
But the question, George, is whether even if there's like one man standing at the end who's the alternative, like Ted Cruz is up against Donald Trump, will the rest of that vote go to Ted Cruz? Or will some of those people who supported Rubio or supported Kasich break to Trump?
It depends on a number of things. How many of the late primaries does Cruz win as opposed to Trump? And if you aggregate all the votes cast, who comes out ahead? Who got more votes in the whole process? So there's a revolt. 1948, Democrats are meeting. Hubert Humphrey, then mayor of Minneapolis, gets up and gives a fiery speech. They adopt a civil rights platform that drives a walkout by Strom Thurmond and some of the others. He goes on to run an independent candidacy from the right. At the same time, Henry Wallace, former vice president for Franklin Roosevelt, hives off a bunch of Democrats and runs an independent candidacy from the left. And Harry Truman wins anyway. So a walkout is not always the kiss of death.
Rich in Michigan, Rich from Michigan says Trump gets attacked and his attacker plummets. Very strange cycle. That is very true. Terry in Maryland, Cruz wouldn't pick Rubio. They're both Southerners. Kasich more likely choice. He'll also provide a more left balance. Okay.
If Trump is worried about this contested convention, you'd think he'd be working on unifying the party now.
Well, he did talk about it last night.
He speaks briefly about it, and then he, in the next breath, returns to the ad hominems. And you saw it again last night in the victory speech that he gave from Florida. The Wall Street Journal said today that Trump has divided the Republican Party the way, almost as badly as Obama has divided this country. There's some truth to that. Fewer than half of Republicans find him honest and trustworthy. I mean, he's got Clinton-esque problems here. And so that is, I think, why you see all the speculation about what will happen if things are close at the convention. But Trump seems in no way interested in trying to head that off.
I think the apprehension on the part of the so-called establishment, which I think is an elusive beast. There are many sightings of the establishment, none confirmed. You know, it's hard to actually put your hands on the establishment, but when we talk about it in shorthand terms...
Mitch McConnell fits the bill.
So generally. I think George Will fits the bill. I think Jason Riley fits the bill. But I think this apprehension on the part of the so-called Republican establishment about Donald Trump is not predicated on sentiment. It's really it's based on a cold calculation I think they are making in their own minds about what kind of candidate he would be in a general election, what it would mean for down ballot, and so forth. And my own assessment thus far is that it would be premature to write Donald Trump off as a general election candidate. I happen to think that Donald Trump, repellent as many find him, is a singular figure. He defies the metrics, he's defied just about every known convention of political campaigning so far. And to discount him as a general election candidate, I think, would be to discount the evidence of this entire cycle.
Rich writes back, knowing this cycle, Trump will end up with 1236. So you may be right on that. Scott, Mr. Duck, Bush tried, Cruz tried to bring Trump down a peg. Rubio is the one who's had the most success thus far, but it cost him a lot to get there. And that is true. I mean, that whole week and a half, 2 weeks where he went into the mud, his numbers started to plummet. It
really was a reprise of 2004 in Iowa, when Gephardt and Dean were at daggers drawn, they barraged one another, and as they limped off the field, Kerry walked through the hole they left and got nominated.
I mean, the question is, Kasich, you know, he's tried to play that role of being outside the fray, but he hasn't won anything. He's 0-20, and he's looking at a Trump candidacy that's on his doorstep, 5 points back in the latest Fox poll.
And I think part of Rubio's problem is he just didn't wear it well. He couldn't even fake being this guy who argues and debates at that level. He was uncomfortable doing it, and I don't think a lot of people bought it. But I also am not so sure that the attacks on Trump, the concerted attacks that we've seen in recent weeks, aren't having some effect. Late deciders are, in fact, going against Trump, and I think it's a little premature to dismiss these attacks as ineffective. We'll know in a week whether or not they've been effective. I also think Trump is in, not Trump, but Cruz is in something of a pickle here, where he wants Rubio out of the race, so he wants Trump to win Florida. But he doesn't want Trump to have those 99 delegates from Florida, which will only make it more difficult for him to catch Mr. Trump. So Rubio's walking a fine line here as well.
You talked about the honest and trustworthy numbers, and it strikes you that much like Romney had Romney Care, and he was going up against Obama and Obamacare, it was it's potential that Donald Trump, because of his honest and trustworthy numbers, goes up against a Hillary Clinton with the same numbers, and it thereby takes a weapon away from the potential GOP nominee.
Except that Trump has the reputation, despite those poll numbers, of being a truth teller. Right? When Chris Christie was forced from the race, all of us said it was because, well, they already had a blunt tell-it-like-it-is guy in the race. Hillary Clinton does not have that reputation. One thing that Trump has going for him is that despite his wealth, and he's much wealthier than Mitt Romney is, or ever was, but yet the Democrats were able successfully to place a top hat and a monocle on Mitt Romney, and they don't seem able to do that with Donald Trump. Why is that? Because Trump does not communicate that he's a snob. In fact, Trump communicates a certain resentment of the very establishment which he's been ensconced in for 45 years.
But he also accepts his wealth. Mitt Romney never did, and sort of hid from it.
Do you remember that ad they ran against Romney? Now, Romney was a gentleman. Part of his weakness in the current climate. But they ran that ad, a man sitting there, steel worker, saying essentially, my wife died of cancer because of Mitt Romney. And
those are the Bain Capital ads.
All of that stuff. And there are 40 people out there waiting to be put in ads who have grievances against Donald Trump. Also, who believes that he can get through November without releasing his tax returns? His position is, I'm stupendously wealthy, I'm a business wizard, and I'm generous beyond imagination. But I'm not going to prove it to you by showing you my tax returns. Instead, I'm going to show you this table full of steaks and bottles of vodka.
And it's not
that won't
just
work.
That there are people victimized by Trump that are ready to sit in ads. Trump has a civil fraud suit hanging over his head.
Why haven't they just been bombarded with all these people already? I mean, why?
Because he has been so lightly vetted. We have only recently seen.
But there were 16
you know how many critical biographies of Donald Trump have been written? This man is not lightly vetted. He has been under the microscope of the Wall Street Journal and other places, other venues for 40 years. And what about the ads that are in the can, so to speak, already about Hillary Clinton and the Benghazi families and so on? So there'll be no shortage of those things. One of the reasons why Trump has endured the way he has in this cycle is because he's a thoroughly unconventional figure, and all the means used to attack him have been thoroughly conventional. Let's apprise people of his record.
No, but
let's spend on negative ads.
Clearly the business gets under his skin. When you attack the business, he doesn't roll out the steaks, he doesn't roll out the water. If it didn't bother the heck out of him that Mitt Romney went on that tirade about his business.
Or claim that Trump University is all fine and that this suit is nonsense. He has a civil fraud suit hanging on, brought by the New York Attorney General, a very ambitious Democrat
is investigating Hillary Clinton. I mean, that's a much more serious matter than this class action suit.
But that's my point.
I see what you're saying.
It's there.
There is no
not going
equivalence
away.
between the FBI and the mishandling of that classified information.
Oh, no, no.
And
I'm
this
not
Trump
saying that there's an
University thing.
equivalence.
Right.
What I'm saying is that these are legal troubles that are not going away. This is a civil suit hanging over his head.
There are legal troubles and there are legal troubles. Let's be frank. I mean, you know, if I had to face legal troubles of those two sorts, I think I would sooner be the defendant in the suit about Trump University than the subject of that FBI investigation.
True. But is it disarming him? Anyway, that was my original point.
Yeah.
But George, you were going to weigh in.
Well, Trump may be testifying in court as early as May in this fraud case, and that's not a net plus to a candidate.
Sure.
Let's look at these polls. Phil, I think you have Florida, Fox 5 poll, Republican primary, all those who've already voted. We've got Trump at 47, Rubio 22, kind of mirrors the actual overall. Number 6, this is certain to support. This is what you see in the exit polls, is that the Trump supporters are adamant that they're not leaving their guy. And there you see up against Rubio. And then Fox Poll 7, what should happen to illegal immigrants working in the U.S.? This is Florida. And that does not, match Donald Trump's policies.
True. And I think, honestly, there's a disconnect in a lot of ways between how people might feel about given issues and what Donald Trump has had to say about those issues. But again, because he's an unconventional figure, people are responding to him in unconventional ways. Previously, in a Republican primary ecology, if you were on videotape saying, I'm very pro-choice, or I'm very liberal, or the economy always seems to do better under Democrats, that was a silver bullet. There was no recovery from it. I do want to go back to one thing that Jason said, which I agreed with about the Rubio campaign, which was that, to the effect that Rubio's attempt to play Trump style just wasn't bought by anyone because he didn't seem very natural doing it. The question that has to be answered historically about the Rubio campaign was, what happened to bring him to that point of trying that gambit, which failed so evidently?
Trump lowered the level of debate, of political debate in this country significantly. That's what happened.
What Rubio's strengths, which were manifest and well remarked upon, should have been able to vault him past that. No, was Donald Trump's coarsening effect was what created an 0 for 18 for Rubio?
It's more than a coarsening effect, I think.
Why did Rubio go 0 for 18?
The attacks on Megyn Kelly, the attacks on John McCain, he's now attacking the First Amendment. It's on and on and on. You're right, no normal candidate would have survived this. And I think it has shell-shocked some of his rivals.
I think
this guy will say anything.
They were trying to come up with something to get equal coverage in an environment where Trump is all dominating, and so he went down into the mud and hurled the insults, and he did get on a lot of TV.
The disparity between Rubio's performance for the first 3 months or so and Cruz's. Why did Cruz prosper to the extent he has in this Trump-dominated, this coarsened environment, and Rubio?
Because he's portrayed as an outsider. And Cruz had, to George's point in the show, if Trump wasn't there, Cruz would have ridden that outsider wave all the way back into Washington.
And he's also done the homework. He has better organizations in more states than anyone else. He has better analytics behind him also. Let me ask you this question, answer your question with a question. Why is it that Rubio and Cruz, who are almost exactly the same age, and they're both freshman senators, a lot of people look at Rubio and say, too young. No one looks at Ted Cruz and says, not ready to be president. They might want him to be president, but no one says that.
This could be a function. They're also both Latino. And by the way, I'm pleased that the Special Report Online show can be a forum for the Socratic method of answering questions with questions. I think that this has to do with simple appearance. Rubio has a kind of boyish appearance. Cruz kind of looks older than his years. And I think part of Rubio's problem over the past couple of years has been that he has been so concerned about his boyish appearance and being branded unready, if you will, that he has adopted a kind of joyless demeanor and a kind of grim doomsayer kind of posture because he's afraid to be seen as the next Obama. Glib, great smile. So I think Rubio's boyishness may have worked against him, or he overcompensated for it.
And, Trump, listen, is a master Brander. And when he calls them Little Marco and Lion Ted and Low Energy Jeb, it is like finding the plate in the armor that is loose and sticking the dagger through there. And he keeps hitting it, keeps hitting it, keeps hitting it, to the point where everybody's picking it up. Drudge Report has a picture of a diminutive Marco Rubio walking out of CPAC. And
Can I
mean,
just say, on your point, I agree with you. And the particular language employed there, Little Marco and Lion Ted, it sounds to me like characters from a Dickens serialization. And, you know, like when last we saw the adventures of Little Marco and Lion Ted, it is genius. It is, frankly, it is when if he wins, people will look back on that as one of the more adept uses of rhetoric and language by Donald Trump. It is almost as if to say they are Tweedledee and Tweedledum. They're both beneath me, Little Marco and Lion Ted. It's been devastatingly effective. I would
Low
say.
Energy Bush.
I still come back to the fact that Trump, despite the theatrics, the brand, the marketing genius, has not won over a majority of Republicans. Has not. I mean,
but yet he's on his way to the nomination.
He is on his way to his nomination, and if the other polls are correct, he's on his way to a pretty thorough defeat by Hillary Clinton. Cruz would do better. Rubio would do better. Ending up with Trump. I mean,
if she doesn't get indicted.
If she doesn't get indicted, yes.
I mean, there's nothing like this election season. Nothing.
Let me ask
we have
you
a Democratic socialist that just won Michigan.
Yeah.
I mean,
who else could have done this? Name another celebrity, athlete, reality show star, prominent American in public life who could have done what Trump's done here, which is basically a few years after giving money to Hillary Clinton, waltz into the Republican primary process, hijack it, and just about walk away with it. He's a singular figure,
but
for good or ill.
You can bet your life that there are a number of very rich guys out there saying, this looks like fun. I might do it next time, and at the top of my list is someone like Mark Cuban.
Yeah. What I said in an interview, and it got a lot of pickup, was just one question. I said there are a number of Republicans who are, you know, possibly going to vote for Hillary if it's Trump, because they just can't do it. They're like the diehard never-Trumpers. And I said, also in this interview, I said, they asked me about 2020 and whether it was going to be boring compared to this. And I said, listen, Kanye 2020 is going to be quite something to watch. And you never know. I mean, it has changed, the paradigm has changed.
Another voluminous user of Twitter.
Yeah. Exactly. Those press conferences would be interesting. All right.
First Lady Kim Kardashian, just to sort of tantalize with that.
What about the email situation? I mean, what is so... I'll tell you, it was a little frustrating in the town hall format to go down those, the line of questioning, because you get into a rabbit hole, and it's just, I wish I had more time. But it seems like they're stuck on what was marked classified or not, but it doesn't matter. It was on the server. Right.
I think that Clinton is convinced, and I think it's reasonable for her to feel this way, that for her supporters this doesn't matter. They really don't care. And unless Bernie Sanders is going to make an issue of it, and he clearly is not, it's not going to hurt her. Unless James Comey is going to make an issue of it, it's not going to hurt her. But other than that, her supporters do not care about this issue. And so she's just going to dissemble. She is just going to spin. And it really doesn't matter if she's making a lot of sense or not, because her supporters don't
But
care.
Her supporters aside, what we know, doesn't look good.
It doesn't look good, and that's why she has gone to Plan B, which is always Plan B for the Clintons, which is to attack people who are investigating her. In this case, members in good standing of a Democratic administration, inspectors general at the State Department, for example.
And the intelligence community.
Yes.
I mean,
I think that Jason's correct, that this is not a major issue for the Democratic electorate in this cycle. I asked somebody with MoveOn.org recently, why is it that only Martin O'Malley and Bernie Sanders drew the lesson of Obama from 2008 that Hillary Clinton is beatable? Where were the other people in this party to take her on. And this person said, well, as you'll recall, we tried to draft Elizabeth Warren. I said, yes, but even Elizabeth Warren is 65 years old. Sanders is 74 years old. Where's this generation? Where's the young people to follow the Obama model against this candidate?
They're licking their wounds and in the private sector because a whole generation of rising Democrats was cut down by the wave elections in 2010 and 2014.
I got it, which is true, but I did get a different answer from the MoveOn.org person, which was to this effect, that the election of 2016 is really a reaction still to the Great Recession, whereas Obama in his time was a reaction to Bush-Cheney Iraq. And there weren't enough Democrats out there who felt they had a different response to offer to the Great Recession from Hillary Clinton in the way that Bernie Sanders quite evidently has offered. I thought that was an interesting or plausible explanation, but so is yours.
And there's also the we're not ready for another freshman senator thing. You know, like the experienced hand on the till may go that way as well. All right, so now we're coming up to Florida and Ohio. The last thing is around the table here. How do you think it breaks down?
It's do or die for Rubio in Florida, and pretty much the same, I think, for Kasich in Ohio, and I think both of them know that. I don't think they're going to hang around if things don't go their way.
James?
It was interesting, the Fox News polls that we released tonight that showed early balloting, I think, breaking for Trump and not for Rubio. And that was something that his campaign told me just yesterday when I followed Rubio around in Ponte Vedra, Florida, that early balloting and absentee voting is going their way. They say he knows how to win in Florida. It doesn't look good right now.
If late next Tuesday night, Ted Cruz looks around and says, okay, Trump got 99 delegates out of Florida, and he beat Kasich, and he got, whatever it is, 60-some delegates out of Ohio, I think Cruz would say, it's tough, but I can live with that. Because now, with a lot still to go, it's going to be one-on-one, and if I can, from there on in, show the delegates at the convention that I do better than Trump does, he can take that trade-off.
All right, guys. Thank you. James, thanks for subbing in.
My pleasure. Thank you.
And our condolences.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in. Special report online every Wednesday when we're here. And Control Room, a little goodbye.